Welcome. We're about to dive into a really profound spiritual parallel. It's this hidden connection, woven right into the fabric of two of the most powerful stories of faith, and it reveals a single timeless wisdom. Our journey kicks off with a puzzle, really, from the Quran. It's in the story of the prophet Musa and this mysterious, incredibly wise figure known as Khidr. So Musa, who is a prophet of God's law, ends up witnessing Khidr do three things that honestly seem to defy all logic and morality. What on earth was he seeing? So first up, an act of what looks like just senseless destruction. After some poor fishermen give them a free ride on their boat, their only source of income, Khidr grabs an axe and just starts smashing a hole in it. You can imagine, for Musa, this must have felt like a complete and utter betrayal. And then, if you thought that was shocking, the story takes an even darker turn. It's an act of violence against a kid who seems totally innocent. Khidr takes the boy's life, and Musa is just horrified. He can't wrap his head around how a man of God could do something so terrible. And for the final act, we get this thankless piece of labor. They get to a town, and the people there are so rude they refuse to give them any food or water. And yet, Khidr stops and he patiently rebuilds a wall that's about to collapse. And he doesn't ask for a single thing in return. It's an act of charity for people who showed them zero kindness. But then comes the reveal. Khidr explains that every single one of those acts, which all looked so harmful on the surface, was actually hiding a much deeper mercy. It's what the tradition calls hikmah, or divine wisdom. You see, that damaged boat? It was saved from a tyrant king who was seizing all the good boats. That young boy? He would have grown up to become a tyrant himself and oppress his righteous parents. And the wall? Well, beneath that wall was a hidden treasure that belonged to two orphans, and Khidr was just protecting it until they were old enough to claim it. And this, right here, brings us to the very heart of what we're talking about today. What if this pattern, this idea of outward harm, actually hiding a deeper mercy, wasn't just a lesson for Musa? What if it was a direct reflection, an echo, of a life lived by the ultimate example of surrender? This, of course, brings us to the life of Prophet Ibrahim. And his story suggests that long before these lessons were taught to Musa, they were actually lived by the man, who is the very archetype of surrender to God. You know, the Quran puts it so clearly. Ibrahim's faith wasn't built on having an easy life. No, it was forged in the fire of these immense trials. And through every single one, he didn't respond with questions. He responded with complete fulfillment, with total trust in a wisdom he couldn't even see yet. Okay, so now let's draw the first parallel. It's pretty amazing. On one hand, you've got Khidr damaging the boat to protect it. On the other hand, you have Ibrahim, who is commanded to leave his wife, Hajar, and his baby son, Ishmael, in a barren, empty desert. I mean, it looks like total abandonment, a devastating loss. But that very act led directly to the miracle of the well of Zamzam, to their survival, and to the birth of a great nation, right there in that very spot. And when you lay it all out like this, the full parallel is it's stunning. Khidr's second act, which purified his parents' future, perfectly mirrors Ibrahim's willingness to sacrifice his own beloved son Ishmael, an act of ultimate submission that purified his lineage for all time. And then there's Khidr rebuilding the wall to protect a hidden treasure. Well, that maps perfectly onto Ibrahim and Ishmael raising the foundations of the Kaaba, protecting the spiritual inheritance of pure monotheism for every generation to come. You see, long before Musa witnessed these lessons, Ibrahim had already lived them. This incredible parallel isn't just a neat connection between two stories. It's pointing to something much bigger about the very nature of these sacred narratives, how they seem to echo and rhyme with each other across time. Now, it is really important to be clear here. Classical scholars don't explicitly connect these two stories in this way. This is an interpretation that comes from a deeper, more contemplative reading of the text, where you're looking for the patterns and the echoes within the stories themselves. This is what's known as the esoteric, or the batin, dimension of the text, the inner symbolic meaning. It suggests these stories aren't just one-off historical records. They're timeless patterns of divine wisdom that repeat and ripple through the ages, all to reveal one single, unified purpose. As some contemplative thinkers have put it, the Quran isn't meant to be read like a simple linear novel. It's way more like a symphony where themes and motifs echo and reappear in these beautiful, complex arrangements, all pointing back to one central truth. So this is all fascinating, but why does it matter to us right here, right now? Well, this powerful parallel isn't just some intellectual exercise. It actually offers us a profound lens for understanding the trials and the challenges in our own lives. It gives us a really practical framework for faith. Number one, to trust that what looks like a broken boat, an apparent disaster in our lives, might actually be an act of divine preservation. Number two, to understand that what feels like an unbearable sacrifice might be a necessary purification, one that leads to a kind of spiritual rebirth. And number three, to have faith that our blessings that seem delayed are not denied. They're just being guarded, like a treasure behind a wall, until their perfect time to be revealed. You see, Ibrahim's certainty didn't come from having an easy life. It was forged by his willingness to surrender what he loved the most for what God loved more. And in that ultimate act of surrender, in that letting go, he was shown the inner reality of everything. And that leaves us with this final, really powerful question to think about. What if the most difficult, the most confusing, the most painful events in our lives, the very things that test our faith to its absolute limit, are actually the greatest acts of hidden mercy in our own personal stories?